Hello everyone, welcome to Kumari's Kids channel. Today's story is going to be Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is an interesting story. Let's have fun. Once upon a time there lived a lovely little princess named Snow White. Her vain and wicked stepmother, the queen, feared that someday Snow White's beauty would surpass her own. So she dressed the little princess in rags and forced her to do work as her scullery maid. Each day the evil queen consulted her magic mirror. Magic mirror on the wall, she would chant, "Who is the fairest one of all?" As long as the mirror answered, "You are the fairest one of all," Snow White was safe from the queen's cruel jealousy. In spite of the way the queen treated her, Snow White was happy and often sang as she went about her humble task. One day she was busily scrubbing the steps in the courtyard of the castle, humming softly to herself when she noticed that her pail was full, nearly empty. The princess rose from her hands and knees and went to the well to draw more water. "I'll tell you a secret," she confided to the birds perched on the well. This is a wishing well. I'm going to make a wish into the well, and if it echoes back, my wish will come true. With that, Snow White leaned down to make her wish. As her words began to echo back from the well, there was a wild flutter of wings as the bird started up in the alarm. The princess smiled gently. Like every young girl, she was wishing for a true love. So intent on her wish was Snow White that she didn't hear the lone rider approaching the castle. Surely here was her wish come true. A handsome prince on a white horse. The prince dismounted and approached Snow White, realizing she was no longer alone. The princess spun around in surprise, a look of alarm on her face. "Oh," gasped the lovely princess, "you frightened me." The prince was about to apologize for alarming her, but Snow White, like a settled deer, turned and fled back into the castle. "Wait," cried the prince, "please don't run away." But Snow White wouldn't stop until she gained the safety of the castle balcony. There she finally stopped and turned to look down at the stranger. Certainly he was handsome. Then the prince smiled up at her, and she knew from the kind light in his eyes that she had nothing to fear from him. "Now that I've found you," he called, "I must know your name. I've searched everywhere for you." The princess Snow White blushed and waved to him shyly, then went indoors. Her stepmother The queen, meanwhile, was in a fray. She had again consulted a magic mirror, and this time it had given her the answer she feared most. Snow White is the fairest of all. Sitting on her throne in an icy rag, she summoned her huntsman. He came before her, hat in hand, making an effort not to seem afraid. Will you take the Princess Snow White out into the forest? The queen snarled. Pick a schedule spot, and there, my faithful huntsman, she continued, you will kill her. But, your majesty, protested the huntsman. Silence, snapped the queen. You know the penalty if you fail me, but to make sure you obey me, she purred with an evil smile. Bring me her heart in this, and she thrust thrust a small box into his hands. Yes, your majesty. The huntsman bowed, went to find Snow White, and took her into the forest. Snow White was enjoying her forest outing as she stopped to gather flowers. She spied a baby bird that had fallen from its nest. Tenderly, she picked up the fledgling. Why, where are your mama and papa? She asked. The princess was occupied with the chick and hadn't seen the huntsman draw his knife and raise it above her, ready to strike. Suddenly, some sixth sense warned Snow White of danger. She rolled around and saw the huntsman's knife. Snow White screamed and shrank back against a rock. The huntsman, remorseful, dropped his knife and sank to his knees. Forgive me, your highness, he sobbed. The queen commanded me to kill you. I cannot do it, Snow White gasped. She is mad, he explained, jealous of your beauty. She'll stop at nothing to destroy you. You must run away, child, hide somewhere, never return. Snow White was stunned and plunged blindly into the forest. It was dark place, echoing with the sounds of owls and other forest creatures. Each tree seemed to clutch at her as she ran. She fancied she saw grotesque faces and glowing eyes. Glowing eyes in the gloom. Finally, the princess collapsed on the ground, terrified and exhausted, unable to run any farther. Now the eyes glowing in a ring around her came closer and closer. Feel better now, said Snow White, looking about brightly. But I can't sleep in a burrow like you rabbits or in a tree like you squirrels. I am sure no bird's nest would hold me. Perhaps one of you knows a place where I can stay? Tripping excitedly, the birds flew down to hold of her cape and began to lead the princess through the woods. Before long, they came to a large clearing. Snow White stopped to gaze in amazement at the scenes that lay before her. Here, in the middle of the dense forest, was a small meadow with a stream running through it. On the far side of the clearing stood a small snug cottage. A ray of sunshine beamed down on it, making its thatched straw roof gleam like gold. To Snow White, the cottage in the clearing looked like just the heaven she needed. What a perfect little house, she said, and started toward it. The little princess and the animals peered in the window. Snow White rubbed at the pane of glass to get clearer view. Oh, she murmured, it's dark inside. She knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Gathering her courage, Snow White opened the door and went inside. Hello, anybody home? She called again. There was no answer. The animals followed her inside. Oh, cried Snow White in delight. What a cute little chair. Why, there are 7 little chairs and 7 places at the table. But the princess noticed as she looked around the room that whoever the occupants of their little cottage were they were untidy. Scattered all over the room were piles of clothing, dirty dishes, and tools. Every surface was coated with dust and cobwebs. Snow White's forest friend gazed in dismay at the confusion, shaking their heads. The princess shook her head too. This room has never been swept, she scolded. What untidy children! You'd think your mother and father would. She paused as a thought struck her. Maybe they have no parents, maybe they have orphans. Snow White was already feeling sorry for the 7 little orphans she'd never seen. She turned to the animals, a determined expression on her face. These poor children, no parents, no one to clean and cook for them, no one to bake them cookie pies. Well, we'll take care of that, she declared. We are going to clean the house for them and surprise them when they get back. Then maybe, she finished thoughtfully, they'll let me stay here. The princess and her animal friends all fell to with a will. After taking off her cape, Snow White assigned the tasks. The squirrels began to wash the dishes while the bunnies and chipmunks started on the sooty fireplace. Snow White herself began to sweep the room. She sang merry tune and the animals worked in time with her melody. The deer dusted, chipmunks and squirrels helped the fawn with her dishes, while yet another chipmunk began to brush away the cobwebs from the rafters. Outside the cottage, the raccoons were washing clothes in the brook, draping the wet garments over a deer's antlers. Several of the birds found flowers and placed them one by one in the vase in the middle of the table, putting the finishing touch on the room that was by now spotless, ready for the return of the orphans. Oh, thank you all so much, said the grateful princess. Not far from the activity in the cottage was a diamond mine. 7 little men, they were stowing away the results of the day's work and preparing to go home. None of them was more than 3 feet tall, but but what they lacked in size, they made in energy, they made up in energy. One of the dwarfs bent to squint at this glittering object in the path of the ore cart. He picked it up, examined it carefully, then discarded it at the clock chimed 5. Since it was time to close up the mine and return home, the 7 dwarfs shouldered their pickaxes and began to homeward march in single file, singing merrily as they went. Meanwhile, back in the cottage, the cleaning operation had finally been completed to Snow White's satisfaction. She stood back and surveyed their handwork with pride. There, she breathed. Doesn't that look better now? Then she looked around and found a candle and lit it, for the evening shadows were lightening. Now let's see what's upstairs. She beckoned at the top of the stairs. At the top of the stairs was a door. Snow White opened it, and they all trooped inside, pausing to stare at the 7 little beds neatly arranged in row against the wall. Why, what adorable beds! Exclaimed Snow White, holding up the candle. And look, the children's names are carved on them. The princess peered closer. Doc, Happy, Sneezy, Doopy, Grumpy, Bashful, she read slowly, and Sleepy. What odd names for the children. Then she yawned all at once, realizing how tired she was. I'm a little sleepy myself, she said. I'll just take a nap. The exhausted princess scratched herself across the 3 beds and fell fast asleep. The birds picked up the blanket and wrapped it across her. The 7 dwarfs were whistling merrily as they came in sight of the clearing. The rabbits inside the cottage were the first to hear them approach. Soon the rest of the animals also heard the whistling, moving quietly so they wouldn't wake the sleeping princess. So the forest creatures crept downstairs and out of the cottage. They quickly disappeared into the woods. The dwarfs marched into the cell clearing in line, in single line. Doc, in the lead, stopped abruptly, and the others piled into him. The whistling died, and the dwarfs stared at their cottage in silence. What's the matter? Asked the Sneezy. Look, Doc's finger pointed at their cottage, our house, that the lights light. Oh, the lights lit? The 7 little men scattered for cover and peered cautiously at their home. Someone was definitely inside. Doors open, chimney smoking. Somebody's in there. Suggestions were made, a goblin, a demo, or even a dragon. Finally, Grumpy spoke up. There's a trouble brewing, mark my words. What will do? The others asked him in apprehension. Let's sneak up on it, suggested Happy as he moved to the rear. That is it, agreed Doc. We will sneak up. Sneak up, follow me carefully. The 7 dwarfs creeped up to the cottage, ready to turn and run at the slightest sign of movement, but nothing stirred. And they reached the windows and peered in. Then Doc opened the door and they went inside. At first, all they could do was stare in amazement at how neat and clean the cottage was. Then Doc spoke. Careful, man, he warned. Search every cook's nanny, huh? Boo, hooks, granny? Search everywhere. The dwarfs began to search the cottage. Look, said Doc. The floor's been swept. The chair's been dusted, mumbled Grumpy. Gosh, our cobwebs are missing, noticed Bashful, peering up at the sparkling clean rafters. Why, the whole place is clean, said Doc. Aye, Grumpy nodded. There's dirty work going on. Sink's empty, called Sneezy from the other side of the room. Someone's stolen our dishes. They aren't stolen. Happy turned from the open cabinet at the cupboard. They all hid in there. Someone's cooking. Sleepy sniffed the air, smile spreading slowly over his droopy-eyed face. The dwarfs gathered around the huge iron pot and bubbling out the fire. Happy grabbed a spoon. Their courage returning, the seven little men stole back into the cottage, ready to do battle with fearsome monster. Holding their breath, they crept upstairs and pushed open the bedroom door with Doc holding lantern aloft. They slipped inside Snow White with a moaned softly in a sleep, and the dwarfs jumped back in alarm. What a monster, hissed Doc. Covers 3 beds, little. Let's get it before it wakes up. They moved forward again, stood looking to the Snow White's blanket-covered form. As they raised their pickaxe to strike, Snow White murmured in her sleep and turned over the dwarfs and saw what the monster was. Why, it's a girl, exclaimed Doc. Ain't she pretty? Breathed Sneezy, fighting back.